Good evening. This is a hogwash alert. Other hogwash alerts will follow. I am a citizen of Rhode Island. I'm also mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm mad about many things, but let's just start with this little nugget. I may be forced to leave here because government is making it too expensive for me to stay here on my fixed income. When I should be enjoying my golden years with my children and grandchildren, I have to face the very real possibility that taxes may be forcing my family apart. I may have to leave and go where the tax climate is more agreeable to old geezers, and they may have to go where jobs are available to people in the private sector. Of course, if you are employed in the public sector, as is 1/6 of the Rhode Island workforce, you are golden. You get to retire at a young age with full pension benefits and a liberal benefit package to boot. The state of Rhode Island and many of its cities and towns are teetering on the brink of insolvency. Many portray the situation as hopeless, and there is nothing we can do but wait for the eventual collapse. I think that's hogwash. Our elected officials do not have the integrity or the courage to address the problems and take the appropriate actions. They appear to have long ago given up even the pretense of representing we the people, and instead have become subservient to the special interest groups and individuals. We need to remove from them the responsibility of making the necessary decisions. We must force them to make the changes required. You can help do this by calling or writing the proper officials and having your voice heard. The more the better, the louder the better. During last fall's campaign for governor, candidate Lincoln Chafee promised that if he were elected, he would raise taxes on everyone and help illegal aliens by rescinding an executive order issued by the previous governor. Of 7 candidates in the race, Mr. Chafee was the only one making these offers. Sounds like hogwash, doesn't it? Part of that executive order directed the state police to cooperate with the federal immigrations and customs enforcement authorities to identify arrested criminals who are in the country illegally. During the 2 years this was in force, 119 criminals arrested in Rhode Island were identified as illegal aliens and turned over to the proper authorities. Another part of that executive order required that businesses doing work for the state use the federal E-Verify system. That system is used to verify that individuals applying for work here are also in the country legally and are eligible to work here. Rhode Island has a close to 11% unemployment rate. That makes this sound like a reasonable step to make sure our legal residents get the few available jobs. Mr. Chafee said, hogwash. The good news is that 63% of the people that voted decided that Mr. Chafee's plan was a bad plan and voted against him. The bad news is that because of the number of candidates in the race, Mr. Chafee won the election with just 37% of the vote. With that mandate, hogwash, he did rescind that executive order as he had promised. A man of honor. Governor Chafee has said that his idea of a good budget is one that spends on education and spends on infrastructure. He did not say anything about a good budget being balanced. Mr. Chafee has offered a budget to the legislature and the people of Rhode Island that calls for about $165 million in new taxes and some $80 million or so in spending cuts to deal with a projected deficit of $300 million. I know, it's not balanced, but this is Rhode Island. Most would tell you that if you spend more than you take in, you're going to be in for a rough ride with nothing but a crash in sight. It is worth noting that Rhode Islanders are already heavily taxed, so much so that many of those able to do so are leaving for more friendly tax environs. Not just residents, but businesses also. Mr. Chafee has asked for input from anyone to offer viable solutions to our budget problem. Hogwash. He has turned a deaf ear to nearly every proposal given. With a population of just over 1 million people, Rhode Island spends between $300 and $400 million per year on benefits of one form or another to illegal aliens. That's $300 to $400 per man, woman, and child in the state. Stop that insanity, and our fiscal picture brightens considerably. Rhode Island is also suffering under the enormous weight of unfunded pension and post-retirement benefit packages agreed to by the public sector unions and the people they were able to get elected into office. To believe that the tax-paying public was properly considered in these negotiations would be ludicrous. Due diligence to fiduciary responsibilities seems never to have been considered and probably should be investigated. You know that's not going to happen. Reason would dictate that we finally examine these packages and adjust them to reflect something close to a sustainable reality. Like maybe put them in line with most private sector packages. Help the governor get the message. Tell him enough is enough. Tell him that any benefits for illegal aliens is hogwash. Tell him those bloated public sector pension and benefit programs are hogwash. Tell him that any new taxes are hogwash. Give our children and grandchildren a chance for a future here in Rhode Island. Please, let your voices be heard. To call the governor and tell him you think his policies are hogwash, dial 401-222-2080. You can also send him an email at governor@governor.ri.gov. That's governor@governor.ri.gov. More hogwash alerts will follow on Senate President Piva Weed and her successful blockage of a Senate hearing for E-Verify in the 2010 legislature. 2011 Senate Majority Leader Dominic Ruggiero's questionable State House hiring practices, and 2011 House Speaker Gordon Fox's over-the-top pay raises for his State House aides. Thank you very much. Good night.